Alright, Nilufer Yanya, Painless album review. Let's chat about it. Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning. Here tonight to chat about this latest from Nilufer Yanya, UK-based singer-songwriter. I've been, sort of keeping tabs on her ever since her Small Crimes EP. And yes, I wasn't a fan of a lot of the remixes on her early EPs. I don't know, it just never really rubbed me the right way. I did think there was a lot to like about these EPs. This is especially, for her Plant Feed EP. I thought there was something really old school and classy about this EP. She seemed to be influenced by the alternative rock of the 90s, modern day singer-songwriters, also a little Sade. I thought her Do You Like Pain EP was pretty sharp too. Hell, I mean, this had some of my favorite tracks from her, like Thanks for Nothing. Now, her debut album, a couple of years back, I'm kind of middle of the road on. I mean, a lot of people loved it, but I've heard a lot of criticism as well. A lot of people were quick to point out it's a little too hipster, and you know what? I get it, but at the same time, it is a very hip-hop album with really subtle nods to jazz that I really like. It's very classy. I mean, tracks like In Your Head and Paradise are so good. And, I've actually been pretty interested to hear this album, mostly because the singles leading up to this album were a lot more experimental. It seemed to be hitting out on a lot more genres this time around. Let's chat about this thing. Not for nothing, I think The Dealer is really sharp intro. I love the hazy, upbeat riff that we get here. It brings me back to some early days, I don't know, like 90s alt rock. Some really good stuff though. And I love Nilufer's vocals here. They are so smoky, so soulful. That's something you're going to hear a lot of on this album. A lot of this track just shows her scratching a lot of itches that I have. She is really branching out on this track, really trying some new things, really experimenting with her sound. It's a very good start, but if that's very good, then LR, or Left Right, is fantastic. This is one of my favorite tracks here. I love the sleazy bass riff that we get here. I love the throwback production. It's got a very 80s feel to it. It almost comes off like what Kate LeBon was doing on her album a little while back. It is slick, and I love just how commanding her vocal performance is here. Stabilise is just a really nice break of a track. It's a lot more upbeat. It's a little bit more forward. It's pretty hectic instrumentally. There's almost some surf rock influence in the guitar. As a matter of fact, man, when Nilufer is really jamming on the guitar on some of these tracks, it is some of my favorite of her stuff. I mean, at first I was kind of worried that just because this track was a little bit more forward in the rock category, that this would be something that, I wrote home about. But honestly, from all around, it is just a very great track. It's a little aggressive. It's super catchy still. It's great. Chase Me is a track that at first I heard and I was not here for at all. Honestly though, it really grew on me. I love the melancholy riff. I love the gloomy vocals. And the production on this track, it's not something that I've completely wrapped my head around yet. It's not something that I'm completely for. But it's really easy to just get locked into the groove on this track. And that's what initially won me over. And Midnight Sun is the closest thing that we get to like an intense track. A lot of this album is her kind of raising the stakes, really branching out in her sound. Instrumentally, this is a very tense track, and that's not something I expected to hear here. The only thing that really breaks anything up here is her very airy, very beautiful vocals. And I will say this, a lot of this album, it's very tough to classify and really break down and give a genre to, but if you can get around that, there's actually some pretty interesting stuff here. Also love the chorus on this track, the intense acoustic strumming, it's so good. I will say this though, there are some parts of the album where I wish that Nilufer kind of narrowed down her sound a little bit. Maybe she takes on a little bit too much. It's definitely the case on Shameless. This is a weird one. I'm not vibing on this sort of lo-fi production that we get on here. And I don't know, her vocals on this track aren't bad. There's certainly a lot worse vocal moments on this album, but I don't know. Compared to some of the other tracks here, this just kind of sounds like it's taking a backseat. Like it's not nearly as fresh. I'm not too crazy about Trouble either. The pacing isn't really doing anything for me. The instrumental's a little too airy for me too. But honestly, it's Nilufer's vocals on this track that are really not impressing me at all. They are dreamy enough to put me to sleep. She chose a hell of a song to be by far her longest here. It's just not very good. I think it's my least favorite track here. And Belong With You is one of the most infuriating tracks here. I mean, on one hand, her vocals are not my favorite. The lyrics are some of the most repetitive and obnoxious of this entire album, and the production is a real misfire. but then we get this crunchy chorus that is so good. Oh, and those jazz elements that popped up on her debut album that I really like. This one's infuriating, mostly because I think that the bad outweighs the good at the end of the day. But most of this album is pretty fresh. I really like Try as well. I think this track is really cool. I love how bluesy and soulful and gloomy this track gets at times. She almost has like an Amy Winehouse thing going on here. It's honestly a route that I'd like to see a lot more out of. I have a lot of the same feelings on Company. I love the guitar playing on this track as well. Once again, there's a serious soul influence on this track, and it's so bluesy and broken down. It just shows that Nilufer has a lot of range right now, and yes, you can argue maybe it's a little bit too much range, but I'm digging that. The Mystic is a great late album knockout. It is funky, it is upbeat, it is jazzy. All of the best influences of this album just come together on this track. It ends up just being a really captivating performance, and a seriously quirky one at points too. And with Anotherlife as a finale, I think she saved the best for last. I think this is the best track on the album, and the best single going into it. This is sort of what drew me to her in the first place. It reminds me of her early EPs. It's a really great pop song, but it is one that has such a appreciation for the traditional throwback pop tune, and it is a good one. It's got a slick beat, the production is great, it is so tasteful and so catchy and heartfelt. Honestly, it comes off surprisingly timeless. This album's pretty darn good. I mean, compared to her last album, Nilufer is clearly taking a lot more risks this time around, branching out, trying new things with her sound. And yes, maybe there are points where she could, break off a little bit more than she could chew. Some experiments don't go the way that she wants them to, and maybe, yes, she can narrow things down. I mean, honestly, like I said, I love the more guitar-driven tracks because I think she's really good at it, and I really love the bluesy and soulful melodies as well on some of these tracks. But still, give this album a shot. There's a lot to really love here. Feeling strong 7 on this album, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.